Occupiers. From the Palestine Chronicle, Palestinians tell of new massacre as Zionist occupation forces storm Jenin. Zionist occupation forces stormed the Jenin refugee camp in the northern occupied West Bank on Tuesday, killing several Palestinians and injuring others, the Palestinian Ministry of Health reported. The Israeli army said security forces are currently operating in the Jenin refugee camp in the northern West Bank, but gave no further details. The Palestinian Ministry of Health said in a statement that the Israeli military assault in the Jenin refugee camp left 26 Palestinians wounded, 3 of them critically. The Palestinian Authority presidential spokesperson Nabil Abu Rudaneh said in a statement that the Israeli killing of Palestinians is an all-out war, and the crime committed by the occupation forces reaffirms the Israeli government's intention to thwart all regional and intentional efforts aimed at stopping all unilateral actions, which the Israeli side insists on continuing, said Abu Rudaneh. Abu Rudaneh called on the United States administration to take immediate action and put effective pressure on the Israeli government to stop its crimes and continuous aggression against the Palestinian people. And from Mondoweiss, 6 Palestinians killed in Jenin during second Israeli invasion of the city this year. The Israeli army launched yet another massive military invasion on bastions of Palestinian resistance, this time in 2 simultaneous raids on Nablus and Jenin. 6 Palestinians have been killed and more than a dozen injured after an Israeli military invasion of Jenin, the second large-scale offensive on the city and its refugee camp in the last 2 months. At the same time, the Israeli army also invaded Askar refugee camp in Nablus, injuring 12 Palestinians and arresting 3 others. Initial reports from the Israeli military claim that the twin invasions were a coordinated attack aimed at rooting out the resistance cell that allegedly orchestrated the Huwara operation on February 26, which left 2 Israeli settlers dead. The 6 men killed in Jenin were identified by the Palestinian Ministry of Health as Mohammed Wael Ghazawi, 26, Mohammed Ahmad Salim Kloof, 22, Tariq Ziad Mustafa Nator, 27, Ziad Amin Al-Zarini, 29, Abdel Fattah Hussein Karusha, 49, and Mutasim Nasser Sabag, 22. Since the start of the year, Israeli forces have killed 72 Palestinians, 25 of whom were from the Jenin district alone. The Jenin invasion on Tuesday afternoon at approximately 2:45 p.m. Undercover Israeli special forces invaded Jenin just outside of Jenin refugee camp located east of the city. Footage from local residents allegedly shows the entry of undercover special forces in a white van carrying a West Bank license plate bearing Arabic graffiti that reads, "The Transportation of the Future." Although Mondoweiss did not independently verify these claims, previous extrajudicial assassination efforts have often included undercover forces entering locations in white vans. The military operation was carried out at midday, coinciding with after-school rush hour when roads were full of civilians. Within moments, military reinforcements of more than 24 armored vehicles, including military jeeps and bulldozers, raided the city from the illegal settlement of Dotan southwest of the camp and the Jalame military checkpoint northwest of the camp. A building was surrounded and besieged by the army under the pretext that armed Palestinian fighters were inside. Armed confrontations ensued between the army and Palestinians amid the incursion. Israeli forces fired live ammunition, tear gas, and other weapons during the offensive, which persisted until the evening. We're surrounded in the house. Special forces are in the area and are bombing our house and our neighbors' houses, all the houses around. A young man, Abu Azmi, is heard saying through an audio recording, "We are, Allah willing, holding on to our final breath. Pray for us." The man pleaded as the 15-second recording ended, "We beg you to pray for us." Iyad Abu al-Azmi was at home when he received a phone call from the army informing him to leave the premises. According to a post on his personal Facebook account, Abu al-Azmi reported that the army began to fire explosive devices at the house. Within 45 minutes of the offensive, an Israeli Apache military helicopter landed near the area where confrontations continued. After invading the camp, phone texts were sent to Palestinians in the area signed by Captain Ward, the current military major responsible for the Jenin area. The Israeli army and security forces will work to enforce justice and security, the message said. It will work with extreme firmness with whoever goes against the law and extends a hand to terror. Within the hour following the text, Israeli forces had already killed Mohammed Wael Ghazawi, 26, with a bullet to the chest, while injuring 5 others, including one in critical condition, according to the MOH. 2 Israeli officers from the Special Operations Yamam unit were injured during the offensive and were transferred to Rambam Hospital in Haifa, north of Jenin. By 5 p.m., another 2 Palestinians were killed. The Palestinian MOH identified the men as Mohammed Ahmad Salim Klouf, 22, and Tariq Ziad Mustafa Natur, 27. Within half an hour, another 3 were killed. Ziad Amin al-Zaraini, 29, Mutassim Nasser Sabak, 22, and Abdel Fattah Hussein Karusha, 49. According to the Israeli military's media dispatch, 0404, the offensive in Jenin targeted the terrorists that killed Hillel Weigel Yaniv in Huwara near Nablus last month on February 26. The media have widely reported that Karasa is responsible for the Huwara shooting, which happened 4 days after the Israel army had invaded Nablus and killed 11 Palestinians. Immediately after the Huwara shooting on February 26, Israeli settlers from nearby settlements rampaged throughout the town, an arson campaign that's been described as pogrom, even by the head of the Israeli army's general command. Sons of Askar resistance fighter arrested. Karusha, although killed in Jenin, is from Askar refugee camp near Nablus. Karusha had reportedly sought refuge in Jenin refugee camp to escape potential extrajudicial execution. During the invasion of Jenin, another twin military offensive was taking place in Askar refugee camp in Nablus, 40 kilometers southeast of Jenin, at approximately 3:30 p.m. Israeli military forces raided Nablus and surrounded a building on Sahel Askar, located on the periphery of Askar refugee camp. According to the MOH, 12 Palestinians were injured during the invasion, with one in critical condition with a bullet to the abdomen. By the end of the raid on Askar, the Israeli army reported that it had arrested 3 brothers, Khalid, Qasim, and Abdel Karusha, the sons of the slain Abdel Fattah Karusha. They were transferred for interrogation by the Israeli Shin Bet under suspicion of having allegedly aided their father. And from the cradle, Israeli army raids Jenin, kills 6 Palestinians. Israel has killed at least 65 Palestinians since the beginning of 2023. The Israeli army killed 6 Palestinians and injured 11 more during a raid on the Jenin refugee camp in the occupied West Bank on 7 March, Wafa reported. According to eyewitness, Israeli soldiers besieged a house with Palestinian resistance fighters holed up inside, while an Israeli Apache helicopter fired missiles at the home. According to the Palestinian Ministry of Health, the fatalities included Ghazawi 26, Husseinia 26, Natur 27, Zaraini 29, Sabag 22, and Karusha 49. Palestinian activist Jamal Huwail told Al-Mayadeen that 2 Israeli drones were shot down above Jenin and that the Israeli military fired several missiles at the besieged house. The Israeli army claimed that the perpetrator of the attack in Huwara that killed 2 Israeli settlers on 26 February was among the dead. Following the resistance in Huwara, Israeli settlers launched a several-hour pogrom against Huwara, killing one Palestinian, injuring at least 390, and torturing dozens of Palestinian homes and vehicles under the supervision of Israeli troops. The Hebrew daily Yedioth Ahronoth said about 400 settlers took part in the attack, and that 6 of the houses burned by settlers were set on fire while residents were inside. In a similar attack in July 2015, an 18-month-old Palestinian boy burned to death after settlers set fire to his family's house in Duma village south of Nablus City in the occupied West Bank. Israeli politicians encourage further settler violence against the Palestinian residents of Huwara, including Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, who said on 1 March that Huwara should be wiped out. Former Israeli spy Jonathan Pollard, who was in prison for 20 years for spying on the United States, expressed a similar sentiment, claiming on 6 March that our enemies only understand decisive retaliation. The destruction of Huwara will mark the beginning of the reconquest of our land. Israel has killed at least 65 Palestinians since the beginning of 2023. The violence of this year has been described as some of the bloodiest in recent Palestinian memory. Comments from Smotrich, Pollard, and others about destroying Palestinian villages and conquering Palestine have raised fears that many in Israel's new government are hoping for a mass expulsion of Palestinians. In response to Finance Minister Smotrich's threats against Palestine and Huwara, former Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz claimed that Smotrich wants to cause another Palestinian Nakba. For him, escalation is a desirable thing. In 1947, pre-state Zionist militias forcibly expelled and carried out the ethnic cleansing of some 750,000 Palestinians, known as the Nakba, that paved way for the creation of the State of Israel with a Jewish demographic majority. And from Al-Mayadeen, the Palestinian resistance shoots down 2 Israeli marches. It should be drones, it's a bad translation. 2 Israeli drones in the Jenin refugee camp. The Palestinian resistance shot down 2 Israeli drones during the clashes with the Israeli occupation forces on the outskirts of a Jenin camp. Today, Tuesday, Israeli media reported that an Israeli occupation drone crashed during an operation in the city of Jenin, occupied Palestine. And the Palestinian activist Jamal Huayel stated in an interview with Al-Mayadeen that a second Israeli drone was shot down over the Jenin camp, indicating that the clashes between the resistance fighters and the occupation forces are still continuing in Jenin. Hawal indicated that the occupation forces fired more missiles at the besieged house in Jenin, explaining that the occupation's Apache helicopters are roaming the airspace of Jenin in the meantime. Palestinians were killed and a number of people were injured today when the Israeli occupation forces stormed the city of Jenin and its camp amid clashes with Palestinian resistance fighters, and this coincided with occupation forces storming the city of Nablus and arresting a number of Palestinians. And from TRT World, Israeli army storms West Bank Jenin city, kills 6 Palestinians. Latest killing follows an overnight violence in the village of Huwara, where Israeli soldiers were seen on video dancing with illegal Jewish settlers and celebrating attack on Palestinians. The Israeli army has stormed the occupied West Bank city of Jenin, killing at least 6 Palestinians and wounding 10 others, according to Palestine health officials. The Palestine Health Ministry on Tuesday identified one of the fatalities as 26-year-old Mohammed Ghazawi. The ministry later announced 5 other Palestinians were shot and killed without giving further details. At least 26 Palestinians were also wounded during the raid. The ministry said 3 of them seriously. The Israeli army said 2 of its soldiers were lightly wounded. Israel said that among those who were killed was an alleged suspect accused of killing 2 Israelis in the northern West Bank town of Huwara last week. The raid was the latest in a string of deadly violence by the Israeli military in the northern West Bank. Last month, a rare daytime military raid in the old city of Nablus left 11 Palestinians dead. Nabil Abu Rudaine, spokesperson for Palestine's President Mahmoud Abbas, called the use of rockets in the Jenin an act of all-out war, Palestinian news agency Wafa reported. Turkish Foreign Ministry published a statement saying it strongly condemns Israeli forces and illegal settlers over the increasing violence and attacks in the occupied West Bank Huwara Huwara attack. Witnesses said Israeli troops entered the camp and surrounded a house as a group of Palestinians fought back with the army, reporting explosive devices and blocks were hurled at the soldiers. Earlier, illegal Israeli settlers also attacked Palestinians in Huwara. The Zionist army and border police forces dispersed crowds of Zionist occupiers of what the military described as a number of violent riots in Huwara during the overnight attack on Monday. Videos shared on social media showed a group of black-clad youths attacking a Palestinian car before its driver manages to pull away. They were shooting at us with live ammunition, Allah help us, said Omar Khalifa, who just finished shopping at a supermarket and got into the car with his family when the attack took place. My wife was sitting in the back and she hugged our daughter to cover her. We could have lost her. There was real danger to our lives. Other footage appeared to show Israeli soldiers dancing together with illegal Jewish settlers in the town on what was the Jewish festival of Purim. Huwara has been conquered, gentlemen, a voice is heard saying in Hebrew. Egypt decries Zionist forces raid on Jenin refugee camp. Egypt strongly condemned on Tuesday Zionist occupation forces storming of Jenin refugee camp, leaving a number of Palestinians killed and wounded. The Foreign Ministry said in a statement that Egypt rejects such Zionist policies and the killings of innocent Palestinians in a blatant violation of international law. Egypt urged all international parties, particularly in the U.S., the European Union, and the United Nations Security Council, to act urgently for putting an end to such escalating acts and diffuse tensions between the two sides, according to the statement. It stressed that peace can be achieved through engaging in serious negotiations in accordance with the two-state solution and international legitimacy resolutions in order to reach a just and comprehensive peace in the region and set up an independent Palestinian state along the 1967 borders with Al-Quds as its capital. And from Wafa, Prime Minister Shtaya condemns Israel's killings in Jenin and says Palestinians will continue the struggle until freedom. Prime Minister Mohammed Shtaya tonight condemned what he described as the horrific massacre committed by the Israeli occupation forces in Jenin camp this evening, which claimed the lives of 6 Palestinians and a number of injuries, in addition to the targeting of homes and the destruction of property, and said that the Palestinians will continue in their struggle until they gain their freedom and independence. Shtaya called on the U.S. administration to intervene to stop the massacres in the Palestinian cities, towns, villages, and refugee camps in which dozens of people were killed. He also called on an international human rights organization to condemn this crime, to hold the occupation authorities fully responsible for it, and for all crimes committed, and to not allow the perpetrators to escape punishment. Shtaya affirmed the right of the Palestinian people to continue their struggle to the end of the occupation, obtain their freedom, and establish their independent state with Al-Quds as its capital. And from Mina, Israel occupation forces kill 6 Palestinians in Jenin. 6 civilians and several members of the Palestinian security forces and Fatah movement were killed while resisting the Israeli occupation forces that raided the Jenin refugee camp in the early hours of Tuesday. The Ministry of Health reported that the number of martyrs reached 6, with several injured due to the Zionist aggression on Jenin. It added that at least 16 more Palestinians had been wounded in the brutal raid, which involved, according to reports, dozens of armored vehicles, military helicopters, snipers, drones, and bulldozers. The ministry added that 6 martyrs and 10 injuries, including a serious injury to the abdomen, were transferred to Jenin Government Hospital. The ministry identified the martyrs as Ghazawi 26, Husseiniya 26, Natur 27, Zaraina 29, and Karusha 49, also Sabag 22. The ministry further stated that 10 injuries were transferred to Jenin Government Hospital, while 2 medium injuries in the thigh and shoulder were taken to Ibn Sina Hospital. Local sources reported that the Israeli forces targeted a house in the Jenin refugee camp with a missile, while smoke columns were seen rising from it. The Jenin refugee camp has turned into a war zone following the incursion of special forces backed by Zionist army troops and the siege of several homes that were bombed with several missiles, which led to the martyrdom of the 3 young men from Fatah movement and Palestinian security forces, according to security sources. The Zionist forces targeted journalists and ambulances and prevented them from carrying out their humanitarian duties. The Israeli army used unmanned aerial vehicles in its aggression on Jenin, where the resistance fighters were able to shoot down one of them. 61 Palestinians, including civilians, have been killed in 2023, the Palestinian Health Ministry said last month. For his part, presidential spokesman Dr. Nabil Abu Rudeina said that the daily killings carried out by the Israeli occupation forces against the Palestinian people, the latest of which was today in Jenin refugee camp, the bombing of homes with rockets and explosive shells, is an all-out war and destroys everything. He stressed in a statement that the Israeli government bears full responsibility for this dangerous escalation, which threatens an explosion in the situation and destroys all efforts aimed at restoring stability. The crime committed by the occupation forces reaffirms the Israeli government's intention to thwart all regional and intentional efforts aimed at stopping all unilateral actions which the Zionist side insists on continuing, said Abu Rudein. He called on the U.S. administration to take immediate action and put effective pressure on the Israeli government to stop its crimes and continuous aggression against the Palestinian people, stressing that the current events have proven that resolving the Palestinian issue in accordance with international legitimacy and international law and giving the Palestinian people their right to freedom and independence is the key to resolving the region's crisis. And from the cradle, Israeli army raids Jenin, kills 6 Palestinians. Actually from C.News, 6 Palestinians killed in Israeli army raid in Jenin. Six Palestinians have been killed in an Israeli army raid in the Jenin refugee camp in the occupied West Bank, the Palestinian Health Ministry has said. The raid on Tuesday afternoon took place in a refugee camp, which is a frequent target for Israeli operations against Palestinian militants. Or citizens. There were reports of heavy exchanges of gunfire while videos on social media showed smoke billowing from a building and helicopters flying over a long line of military vehicles. The Palestinian Health Ministry listed the dead as 5 men in their 20s and 1 man of 49, identified as Abdel Fattah Kharusha. A spokesman for the Palestinian presidency, Nabil Abu Rudeina, said the Israel government was responsible for this dangerous escalation, accusing it of waging all-out war. And let's be clear, what he said, what Rudeina said was that shooting a rocket into a building, in fact, I've read that it was 18 rockets, but shooting these rockets into buildings is an act of war. He didn't say that they waged all-out war. I mean, I guess shooting a rocket could be called waging, but that's not what they said. Jordan, Qatar, and Egypt condemn Israel army assault on Jenin, killing of Palestinians. Jordan, Qatar, and Egypt strongly condemn in separate statements Israel's assault on the northern West Bank city of Jenin and the killing of 6 Palestinians, says Wafa. Jordan's foreign ministry said in a statement that Israel should immediately stop the military escalation against the Palestinian people, warning that the escalation will lead to further deterioration in the situation and more violence, as well as undermine efforts to achieve calm, calling for an end to the illegitimate and illegal Israeli measures and to seriously engage in effective negotiations to achieve a just and comprehensive peace that ends the occupation and achieve an independent Palestinian state with Al-Quds as its capital. Qatari Foreign Ministry considered the assault as a blatant violation of international legitimacy resolutions warning of an explosion in the Palestinian territories, while urging the international community to take urgent action to stop the Zionist aggression, provide protection for the brotherly Palestinian people, and hold Israel accountable for its horrific crimes in the occupied Palestinian territories. In a statement, the Egyptian Ministry of Foreign Affairs affirmed its total rejection of the policy of the repeated Zionist incursions and the resulting civilian casualties among the Palestinian people, which is accompanied by the destruction of property, the demolition of homes, and the loss of lives in clear violation of the rules of international law. This heralds a serious deterioration of the security and humanitarian situation in the occupied Palestinian territories and threatens to destabilize the region, it said. Egypt appealed to all international actors, led by the United States, the European Union, and members of the Security Council, to assume their responsibilities to put an end to the ongoing unilateral and escalatory measures, and to create conditions to enable the efforts to bring calm and a peaceful settlement to bear fruit away from the existing destructive cycle of violence. Also from Wafa, UN Special Coordinator says Israel should protect Palestinian people and the population against its occupier attacks. The United Nations Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process, Tor Wennesland, today said that he was appalled by the violence and that Zionist occupier attacks against the Palestinian civilian population in the occupied territory, stressing that the Zionists must ensure the civilian population safely. I am deeply disturbed by the continuing violence and appalled by the attacks of Zionist occupiers against Palestinians 2 days ago in Hawara near Nablus, as the occupying power must ensure that the civilian population is protected and perpetrators are held to account, said the UN coordinator in a statement. I condemn occupier violence against Palestinians, he said, stressing all civilians must be protected from violence. Wennesland said he was also alarmed by the events in Jenin yesterday, during which 6 Palestinians were killed and more than 20 injured in a Zionist army assault on the northern West Bank city and its refugee camp. We're in the midst of a cycle of violence that must be stopped immediately, he said. The Security Council has spoken with one voice, calling on the parties to observe calm and restraint and to refrain from provocative actions, incitement, and inflammatory rhetoric. Commitments were made in Aqaba in the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan that should be implemented if we're to find a way forward, said the special coordinator. The parties must refrain from further steps that would lead us to more violence. Also from Wafa, Turkey condemns Israel's assault on Jenin and the killings of 6 Palestinians. We condemn in the strongest terms this increased aggression and act of violence by the Zionist forces and Zionist occupiers in the West Bank, said a Turkish Foreign Ministry statement, stressing that the killing of 6 Palestinians in Jenin and the acts of violence and intimidation by Israeli settlers against the Palestinian residents of the town of Hawara in the West Bank are unacceptable. The Foreign Ministry said these increased attacks and actions feed the spiral of violence, further escalating the tension in the region and, most importantly, damaging the international efforts aiming at de-escalating tension at a period when the holy month of Ramadan is approaching. It called for putting an end to these attacks and preventing violence, inviting at the same time the Zionist government to act with common sense and responsibility. From Middle East Monitor, Palestinians killed as Israel storms Jenin camp. At least 4 Palestinians have been killed and dozens wounded by the Israeli army's bullets after occupation forces stormed the Jenin refugee camp in the northern West Bank today. The Palestinian Ministry of Health said in a brief statement that there were 3 injured people, including one with a serious injury to the chest, arrived at the Jenin government hospital. 2 of those injuries were in the thigh. 2 of those injuries were in the thigh and the shoulder. Palestine TV reported that occupation forces had besieged a house inside the Jenin camp. The owner of the house did not know about the action until he witnessed the sight on the news, it added. Special units hid in civilian cars to storm the camp and besiege the house, the report said. Military vehicles accompanied by a bulldozer followed the civilian car to besiege the camp. The house was shelled and smoke could be seen rising from it. Witnesses told the Anadolu agency drones could also be seen operating overhead. The Israeli army said in a brief statement, Our forces are operating in Jenin without giving further details. Israel's Ben Giver instructs police to use force after Jenin camp raid. Zionist far-right National Security Minister Itamar Ben Giver yesterday threatened to shed the blood of those who arm Zionist occupiers. The minister was quoted in Zionist media as saying that everyone who raises a hand to harm settlers should know that he instructed the police to spill blood. Ben Giver's remarks came after occupation forces assassinated 6 Palestinian citizens in the West Bank city of Jenin yesterday. The Palestinian Ministry of Health stated that 6 Palestinians were killed and 9 others were injured, including one who was seriously injured after Zionist forces raided the Jenin refugee camp. The Palestinians who were killed were aged between 22 and 49. Palestinian factions praise resistance in West Bank. Palestinian factions said that the Palestinian resistance in the occupied West Bank will continue and that the occupation's territories. Palestinian factions said the Palestinian resistance in the occupied West Bank will continue and that the occupation's terrorist policies of killing and destroying the Palestinian people are doomed to failure. In a separate statement, Palestinian factions warned Zionists of the consequences of the massacres it's committing in the cities and camps of the occupied West Bank. The factions' warnings came following the Israeli raid on the outskirts of the Jenin refugee camp in the northern occupied West Bank yesterday, which killed 6 Palestinians and injured several others. During the raid, Zionist forces besieged a house in the refugee camp and bombed it with anti-tank missiles. Hamas, Fatah, Islamic Jihad, and the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine condemned the Zionists' occupation aggression and praised the Palestinian people's resolve and determination to defeat the occupation. The Palestinian factions also paid tribute to the martyrs of the Jenin camp and the steadfastness of resistance fighters who shot down a number of Zionist drones that were flying over the camp. And we'll be back with more news